Alright, so a bunch of people, or four different people have asked me to go over baiken, one of them being my brother. And so I'm going to go ahead and make a quick video talking about baiken. And what you can kind of do about her. So I'll first go ahead and preface this with I am not a baiken player. I have noodled with her on Celestial and done okay. I don't remember if I did the challenge with her. I don't think I did. But I have played her a decent bit in casuals and, you know, have fought against a lot of baikens. 3 of my practice partners are baiken players. So I kind of know how her basic RPSs work. But I will say that there's likely going to be some mistakes in here. Just whenever I make one of these, I always forget stuff and I always don't talk about certain things and just whatever. Alright. So, let's go ahead and get into this. So, first, baiken is super hard to fight, right? As the surprise of no one, baiken is one of those characters who is much harder to fight than she is to play. She's very intuitive to play, but very difficult to fight the basic level. Now, at a high level, I think baiken is quite difficult, but at kind of a low-mid level, baiken is one of the easiest characters in the game. She doesn't have... Her combos are easy, her block string is easy, she does a lot of things for you. And she has a lot of very strong tools that are, you know, difficult situations to deal with. Now, so let's go ahead and talk about the first thing is her block string pressure enders. This is one of the first things you should always look at when you start learning a matchup. So she has 4 basic block string enders, as well as some different tricks that she'll do. So first, she has Tatami, Kabari, S-Kabari, and she has 6K. Now, those are all good enders. Each one of them has unique ways that you can target and deal with it, but these are all very good enders, and the best one of them is undeniably 6K. 6K is super good. This move is nutty. Players don't use it, but it's nutty. This move is really good. So, the first thing I want to talk about is Tatami. So, I have a string here. Tatami, press a button, right? So, after Tatami, a lot of players seem to think that it is plus, because at, like, this range, it is. But it's very range-dependent how you fight Tatami. In fact, baiken is a very range-dependent character, so if you use your defensive tools, you can mitigate a lot of the way she controls range and spacing, because many of her tools become much better or much weaker, depending on the spacing. So, baiken's Tatami, she is trying to hit this range. No, not that range, she's trying to hit this range right here, where there's a bit of a gap between the 2 hits, but the first hit does hit. This is where Tatami is strongest. Now, there are lots of ways that you can control the spacing that baiken gets in her block strings. Now, first and foremost, the reason she doesn't want to just do this is that she's minus, right? She's minus, but she can't cancel into anything, right? So, if the first hit hits, most of the time, baiken is going to be minus. The only time that she is not minus on that is when you're at this range, right here, where there's a bit of a gap between the 2 hits, but there's not enough of a gap for you to press between. That's the only time Tatami actually is that good, and so baikens will try and confirm when that spacing is correct. Now, the other thing that you need to know is that if the first hit whiffs, you can challenge, and every character in the game can press a button there. I pressed an 11 frame button for reference, but I believe a 13 frame button also will hit her. But this is a thing that you need to recognize, is that if the first hit whiffs, and you just immediately press, you can hit and interrupt. Now, that is not as easy as just FD, because that actually can control her spacing some. Now, the differences are how you interface with your pushback. So, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about pushback. First, on stand block, look at how far she gets pushed back on her far slash, right? She gets pushed back about a little bit less than a character width, right? However, if she is crouching, she is pushed back about half a character width, right? It's about 50% less. in terms of not 50% of the other one, but it's whatever. You can see how it works, right? She gets pushed back less. So if you crouch, you will end up closer to her. If you stand, you will end up further from her. And if you FD crouching, you'll end up further than standing, but not further than stand FD. So those are the ways that you can mitigate how you interface with where she is. Against the 5k, 6k pressure, most of the time you want to stand FD it so that you can interrupt between the two hits, right? If you are crouching, a lot of the time you're going to get hit by the first hit and you're going to get frame trapped. So that is a simple way that you can kind of control your spacing. Now, it is not as simple as always stand FD, because if I have her flawless defense and I have like run momentum, right, it still works that way, but as a rule of thumb, if you stand FD, it will not frame trap, but it will often work like this. So whereas if it's just right, so that's ways that you can control that. Now, the other thing to know is on this right here, you do not, like, this, if you FD it, you will almost always get the first hit Tatami to whiff, and you can press a button. I do not believe you can press a 13 frame button, I think it's 12 or faster, but I don't know that for sure. That would be a thing you'd have to test. But on this button, if she cancels it, she ends up really far away by default. So she'll like try and roll really close to you and make it really hard to guess between that sort of stuff. But if she's doing that, then you just press in anyway, and it doesn't. It's a lot. There's a lot of interactions to it. Like honestly, it's a hard thing to do if a baiken's good at it. But generally, if you crouch FD this, the first hit's gonna whiff, right? If you're crouching and FDing, first hit normally whiffs, and you can press a button. But now the other thing to know is how her other moves interface with this. So if you are going for immediate pressing a button, this is an option that will blow that up, right? Now, it's worth acknowledging that a lot of baikens don't start with this because 6k does not combo into Tommy except on counter hit and on crouch. On crouch, I believe it does. Oh, it does not. Okay, good to know. So it does not combo except on counter hit. So they're going to be using this specifically to catch you trying to do the tech that I was just showing you. Now, the other thing is that Tatami is minus. So, not Tatami. Kabari is minus, and that matters quite a bit. So right now she's doing Kabari into 5k, which is a pretty common baiken string. They also will do 5p. Now, H-Kabari, I'm not totally sure about this, but I believe it is -3, which means that if you have a 5 or 6 frame button that will reach, it is a very strong tool to press. The reason for that is that her 4-frame button will have a 7-frame gap and will trade with 7-frame normals. But this right here is often when this hits, you're close enough to use one of your faster buttons. If you are further away, like let's say you are out here and she's doing like this kind of thing, this move is 9 frames, and so you have to press a 12 frame or faster button. Most characters have one that reaches at this range that can work. Now, it's not always you press / or whatever, but as a rule of thumb, it is pretty good to contest after Kabari. Now, it's not guaranteed because she has this, which if this counter hits, she gets the strongest Oki she can get pretty much. She gets, you know, she gets a 4-way mix and throw. And it's really strong. So you don't want to get countered by this, but most baikens recognize that this is punishable unless they have meter, so they will hold off doing the follow-up until they have meter. And so then it becomes a game of cat and mouse of when they're going to spend their meter. Now, the follow-up to Kabari is, I believe, -7 or something like that. I'm not totally sure again. But it is punishable at... Every character can punish it at close range. Obviously, at, like, far ranges, like out here, it's not always punishable by every character. Hang on, let's try and get the Kabari to just barely... oh my god, Kabari, come on. There we go. Right, at this range, obviously, basically no one can punish. Kai is super privileged and can still punish this with Stun Dipper, but most characters cannot punish at this range. But... yeah, so, as a rule of thumb, you generally want to mash after Kabari because it is minus, and it's a higher risk for her to contest that mash. Now, she has two options. Like, you'll see baiken sometimes do stuff like Kabari into 6p to beat Far Slash and stuff like that. If your character has a good 2S, you don't have to worry about it that much. You'll also see Kabari into parry. But this is actually horrible risk-reward. This is awful. So if they're doing this, congratulations, you're fighting someone who will just let you win. So in general, that will not be what they do. They should be doing this over parry as the answer because it's a better reward, and it has a weaker punish most of the time. So, but that's a general rule of thumb for what to do about Kabari. Now, if you have a low profile, or like, so Testament, Axel, Happy Chaos, Kai, Ino, those characters, right? The low profiles, Faust. At further ranges, Kabari will whiff under low profiles and 6Ps. So, for instance, if I am out here... oh, I didn't do it right. Let's try and be further away. Right? The 6P made it whiff, right? If 6P makes it whiff, a lot of the low profiles will also make it whiff. And that will dramatically weaken the interactions that she can do. Now, baikens will tend to force this stuff and force this RPS on you really hard. But it's not a super... like, it's not the end of the world to just play into this RPS. There's a lot of basic counterplay. If she has meter, again, it's much, much harder and much scarier, and a lot of stronger baikens will have good meter management. But it's... most baikens will just kind of blow their load and then they don't have meter for a while. So you can kind of make your decision based on that. Now, the last thing is Kabari. So, Kabari, and I don't have this one pre-recorded, so we'll just be like... right, Kabari. Kabari, you can jump out of it. In fact, you can fuzzy jump out of it because it's really slow. So if you have a good fuzzy jump rhythm, you can just down, back, up, back, down, back, and kind of slip out of that pretty comfortably. But also, you can actually react to this move. It's pretty slow. Right, like this is... right, it's pretty slow. Now, obviously, after it, she is plus, and she gets a whole bunch of things, right? She gets her weird overhead, she gets her weird cross-up, she gets all that sort of stuff. But Kabari is basically them conditioning you with... it's essentially greedy pressure that you have a reaction for. Now, Fuzzy Jump does negate it pretty heavily, and she does have a hard time calling out Fuzzy Jumps, so I'd recommend kind of learning some Fuzzy Jump timings on her common situations, like 6K, because it will escape a lot of them, because she can't do 6K in a run throw, or whatever, because it's pretty easy to Fuzzy Jump there. Pretty good option. Now, the other thing about Kabari is pretty much just you're looking for it, right? If they're doing stuff like that, where it's like got this kind of slow rhythm to it, you just, at common places, 6K, 2H, places where most of the time that you're afraid of dealing with Kabari, baikens will try and reset the pressure with Kabari, and so just at those cancel places, just look for it, and that's not too bad. Now, the other things. Alright, so let's talk about Yo Johnson, or whatever you want to call it. So, Yo Johnson is an extremely powerful tool. It's so good. But it is punishable. So it is minus, right? It's right. So if they TK it and they don't have meter, that's a punish. And they can technically do like I don't remember the input. What was it? There's an input where it's not super punishable, but it's still it's always minus. Now, what isn't minus? That's a really common thing for baikens. Let's do. Nope. I didn't get it. Hang on. Oh my god. We're flummoxing. Right. That's a really common thing for them to do. Again, that takes meter. It takes a lot less meter than this. Because it builds meter. It's almost always fast canceled, whereas that is a fast cancel that a lot of baikens don't do for whatever reason. They should do it. It's good, but a lot of baikens don't do it. And what else? So that's that, and then so Yozansen, something that's worth. Oh nope, that's not it. That's good. This is a pretty common idea, and it is punishable. However, at further ranges, if you FD, Yozansen can whiff. And also her low can whiff, too. So FD, again, very strong against baiken. I'm trying to get this to... There it is. Right? You can get this to whiff. Now, you also can 6P, including on... like, close slash. And I'm just a liar, apparently. You can 6P the slower one. I'm just a liar, apparently. You cannot 6P on close slash, but you can 6P on... You can definitely 6P on the 5K version. Which, apparently, I'm just a liar. Okay, you can 6P the better one. You can 6P the slower one. Yeah, I'm just a liar. Ignore me. I have 6P there a lot and gotten rewarded for it, so I thought that it was fine. But no, apparently it takes chicken ramped up there. So, but it is, yeah, that's Yozansen. Now, in neutral, there are some common ideas. Baikens love doing that. They love doing this so much that they don't ever do this. Because they don't often do just the raw jump-ins that much, some baikens will, but most of the time they'll do this. Now, you don't really have to be afraid of swinging for this, because it is not a very big reward for baiken. Oh, apparently I should do this lower, right? Super lower. Right? So, first off, this move is not disjointed at all. So, even at further ranges, it's quite easy to counter hit. Now, if you have a good anti-air 5P, or anti-air 5K, or whatever your light anti-air is, most of the time, you can mash 5P. Now, Baikens is really bad at this. So she would mash like 5K. But because it's not disjointed at all, lights are pretty good against this type of tactic, where you can often just kind of mash both the timing for both of them and be fine. Like, say if you're playing, like, I don't know, Happy Chaos or something with a good anti-air 5P, you can just kind of mash that, and it'll negate the situation most of the time. So it'll usually trade, or you hit them and get rewarded. But similarly, it has no disjoint to it, so you can always 6P this. If your 6P is bad, like you say you play Gold Lewis or Potemkin or Faust or something, you don't want to whiff your 6P, right? Your 6P is long, and they can do empty into low or whatever. You can kind of hesitate with it, but a lot of those characters also have like a mashed option that's pretty strong. Like Gold Lewis has his 2P and his 5P. Faust has 2S and 5P and JH, and Potemkin has 5P. All of them are very good at just mashing and beating this out. So let's see what other things. Similarly, Kavari can be low profiled. If you are playing Kai or Ino at far ranges, you can slide under it with Stroke or Stun Dipper, and that's a pretty reasonable thing at far ranges. So if they do like this kind of thing where you're far away, it's a pretty good option to try and low profile it or 6B to slide under it. Then on defense, all right. So parry, I'm just going to briefly mention this. If your character has farther buttons, parry has a blowback on a lot of far buttons. And whether or not it blows back feels kind of random. But in general, if your character leans forward into their move, the blowback will not... Like, the blowback will usually not happen. But if your character kind of does, like, it's like baiken where they don't really move forward. Like, a good example is, if you're playing, like, Mei or something, her far slash is kind of hard to get it to blow back because of how she leans forward. Right, so her far slash, like, notice how far forward her hurt box is. It has to do with the... It has to do with, like, where the hurt box is, whether or not the parry happens, or, like, where the main body is. And so because Mei kind of, like, leans forward into this, it only blows back at, like, this range, way out here. So you generally want a meaty with, like, this, or something like that, where it just blows back more commonly. And you want to do a lot more delayed options, because if they are doing... after recovery, we'll have her... this one, Haguri, right? This is the move. Oh, no, I had to... That's at her not blocking, so I can do this. Right, so she's... That's her parry, right? Yeah, okay. So, her parry, dealing with the parry is mostly... It does not have that many active frames. So, like, obviously, if you do, like, this kind of thing... Oh. If you do, like, this kind of thing, it blows back, and that's fine, right? The situation, you're slightly minus, but it doesn't matter because you're far away. So if you have, like, a distance-based meaty, like Kai, I will meaty with far slash against baiken if I don't get a charge on edge on my option. And it's fine. But, like, if I'm trying to do, like, this kind of thing, it blows back way out here, but at, like, this range... well, let's get a little bit closer. Let's get a little bit closer. Let's try to be, like, here, right? Right, you'll get parried. Now, something not to do is if you're a character who does, like, this kind of thing, right? You safe jump with throw, and you do, like, that kind of stuff. Throws are almost always going to be parried successfully. So you don't want to go for those sort of safe jumps. Now, ideally, the best answer is something that is late. So you just go up, right? It does not have many active frames. So if you do something that is late... Oh, let's get a little bit later. Oh, let's get a little bit later. Okay, whatever. We'll just do it this way. Right? If you have something like that, that's what you want to get the big domum, right? You know, you get your big damage. That's not the combo, by the way. May can do more damage there. It's hard to imagine that a 300 damage meterless combo is not May's optimal damage, but it isn't. This character's highly underrated. This character's really good. That's pretty much it. I think that's pretty much it. Obviously I missed stuff. Obviously I said things that are a little bit wrong, and I found out during the video recording process that they were wrong. And I'm not re-recording this because it takes like 20 minutes per attempt, and I don't have that much time. But hopefully that gives you some ideas about how to deal with the basics of baiken pressure. And just some different ideas that are helpful to know. If I missed stuff, feel free to put it in the comments for other people. There's more stuff that I know that I didn't think about during the recording process, because again, I do some one take. But there's some ideas of what you can do. I did not cover neutral or defense that thoroughly, but those are some basic ideas that are pretty common. So hopefully this is helpful for some people, and I'll go ahead and throw this up.